way up, away, ay, 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 ay. Away up, away up, ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Away, ay, 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 ay. Away, ay, 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 ay.
Hello, welcome back to the second hour of The Bridge with Kira. Today we have with us Varushka Franceschi. She's just coming on. Are you there, Varushka?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, welcome to The Bridge. And I understand that you have with you as well James Cromwell. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Hi, welcome to The Bridge. Thank you so much for joining us. I don't know if you were able to catch the first hour, but we had a water protector from the UK who had participated in a very successful action this week on Tuesday, where they stopped the trucks from being able to do what they needed to do to frack in the UK. It was a beautiful thing. They have a lot of community support over there in the UK, and the people over there, 90% of them are against fracking, so they're very much ahead of the game, and they're not in need of movies like the one that you're making in order to educate people to just how dangerous fracking is and what we need to do to stop it here. So welcome, Varushka, and welcome, James. Let's start with you, Varushka, in terms of where you're at with the production of this film that you're directing and what you need. There's an Indiegogo thing going on right now for the 4 more days. Is that correct?
That's right. Where we are is we're actually about 40% shot, and we have James Cromwell who joined the cast, and so we kind of were regrouping and raising more money in order for us to complete production. Our plan is to complete production, in the spring, and then edit and try to get this thing out as quickly as possible. Because actually this is a very key time right now for films like this, especially, because we're, everything is just happening so quickly.
Right. With the Trump administration just wanting to frack even more. We already have 1 million wells, but they want to frack some more, and they want to put pipelines where fracked oil goes through, and it's not worth the destruction for the kind of energy that we get out of it, the massive destruction.
Right, and I spoke with a friend of mine, a colleague of mine in Pennsylvania, who was talking about another pipeline. FERC approved another pipeline there, and they're going to begin cutting trees, and it's very disturbing because the plan is for 100,000 wells. Right now, there's 10,000 wells apparently in Pennsylvania, and it's going to grow to 100,000 wells. So, that's really crazy when you think about it. I mean, it's already crazy the amount of wells that there are now.
Right.
And one of the things that's even more, upsetting is that there's so many people that don't realize that just because something's happening in Pennsylvania or Texas or whatever, that maybe it might not affect them, but it's going to affect all of us.
Right. And places that are highly populated that used to be really off limits to fracking are now going to be on the table. And Indian country is going to be much more on the table than it even is now, which is really on the table all the time. So we're going to have to continue to come together and strategize ways to stop it. Not only are you making a film, but you're really engaged in activism as well. You and James are engaged in activism, and we have another person that you've also invited to join us here, and is that Pramila? Are you with us as well?
Yes, I am. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. You are the Democratic Senate candidate for New York, District 42, or is that what you were?
Yes, I was in 2016.
Right.
And I may be again.
Well, I'm sorry, say that again?
And I may be again.
Right, and that's really your community got behind you in your stance as far as no fracking. Orange County's been one of the many danger zones or war zones in terms of fracking, just as decimated as Pennsylvania, but I understand there's been a little success there as well.
I don't know if I would call it success. I mean, as Marushka alluded to, we unfortunately have an energy policy backed by both Democrats and Republicans that is spreading fracking poisons all across the country, because all of those poisons travel with the gas through the pipeline, through metering stations, compressor stations, storage facilities, processing plants, and eventually to power plants. And our entire national energy supply is transitioning away from coal and nuclear to gas. And that means thousands of miles of pipeline across the country. And as bad as coal and nuclear are, gas is much, much worse, both from a public health perspective as well as a climate change perspective.
Not only is gas coming out through the fracking wells, but it's also polluting through these pipelines. So activists are trying to stop the pipelines, but what's happening at the sites where these where this energy is being fracked? Those are dangerous sites to go to.
Yeah, one of the things that I found out when I first went to Pennsylvania this was during a boom season 5 years ago. I went to Towanda, and I got out of the car, and it was the first time that I had actually been to an area that was being fracked like that. And I got out of the car and I almost passed out from the smell. Seriously, I felt so sick to my stomach, and that was just a short time being there, breathing that air. So, no one really knows exactly what's in the air. I mean, we know some of what's in the air, but we don't know everything that's in the air. So, and we don't even know exactly what's in the water either. That's been contaminated in a lot of cases. And so, people have to understand that if there were only 10,000 wells up until this point, if we're talking about 100,000 wells just in Pennsylvania, I mean, what are we looking at here? I mean, this is a really serious, for me, this is why I changed my life, because, and you can maybe say that I'm an accidental activist because of what I began to learn when I went there for the first time, basically on the front lines. I just realized, and friends of mine were getting sick, and 2 people that I knew and became friends with are actually now dead from rare forms of cancer. So to me, this is an emergency. I mean, we're dealing with an emergency here, and all of us, every person that is alive right now, I believe, has a responsibility to understand that we all are responsible right now, each one of us. Even if we don't consider ourselves an activist or whatever in our life, we're responsible for this environment that then we're going to pass on to our children. But we're certainly responsible to the people that are alive right now if we have information. So
yes.
So this is why, this is another reason why I'm so passionate about making this film and getting it out there, because I just think that there's different ways of communicating this kind of thing to people. I mean, some people don't get it in one way. Maybe they won't get it if it's too cerebral. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Maybe they can get it in other ways. And that's just, my feeling.
Right. And we have the Trump administration's actively anti-science stance. And the reason they're anti-science is because scientists have the data to prove that what they're doing is killing all life for profit. And they don't want that to get out there. But as a filmmaker, you can, or as a director, you can get that information out there. But you're not going to get the big Hollywood dollars to do that, and that's why you still, even with James Cromwell, thank you very much for joining the project, even with a name like that, you're still going to have an Indiegogo campaign because you're not going to get these big Hollywood dollars to make that
You got it,
film.
Carl. That's right.
So what brought you, James, to the project?
Because I have been involved, along with Pramila, in trying to stop the gas-fired power plant near where I live, which is in Wawayanda. It's the CPV power plant. And over the course of trying to educate this community as to the dangers of this plant, we had it's very difficult to make inroads. It's a Republican county. The newspapers, the media has no interest. They back the business interests. People are unaware of what's happening in their backyard. Even the people who are going to be adversely affected by this power plant because they live 1,000 yards away from it, and they will get all the effluviant that comes out of the smokestack, which is the ultrafine particulate matter and all the other poisons that are in the frack gas, and they have no idea what this is going to do to their health and the health of their children. So we had a town of sort of a forum that Pramila participated in, and Dennis Kucinich came to, presenting both sides. It actually didn't need to present the side of the industry because everybody is aware of why the industry is doing this, which I think it's important to say at this juncture. Of course, the use of this frack gas in America is a huge financial windfall to the gas and oil industry, especially if you have 100,000 wells and you're providing plants all over the country with this noxious gas. But the gas itself can accrue 6 times the amount of money by being sold, liquefied, and then sold in Asia and in Europe. So they really want these pipelines to get it to the liquefaction facilities and then to transship it to Europe and Asia and make an even greater profit. So this was what explained in this town hall meeting we had. And at that town hall meeting, I met Verushka. She told me about the film that she was making. I agree that it's very important to create, what we do is create a story, a narrative around the facts of this issue. The facts of this issue can be debated. It doesn't necessarily mean that the side that says global warming is not occurring have a leg to stand on, but we live in a fair and balanced, supposedly, media atmosphere in which all facts, even alternate facts, are taken at equal value to the truth. So you have to create a narrative, a story that people can identify with. They can see what the effect of this industry on a community, what it means as it destroys people's lives, their communities, and the ability of our species and all life to continue to exist on this planet. So that's what we're trying to do with this film.
So I believe that my husband is now putting your Indiegogo campaign into the chat rooms of the stations that are simulcasting us right now. You have 4 more days left in this campaign. It's an important movie to get out there. Please, whatever you can, give to this special project. It really needs to happen. I know you've been working really hard on it, Verushka, for years.
Yes.
And I'm really happy to see where you've got to, because it was a very brave thing to do, to just step out and say, I'm going to do this thing. Good on ya.
I don't really feel like I had a choice. I just felt so deeply disturbed and moved that I changed the course of my life, really.
And to go back to the facts that James was just talking about, this whole narrative or idea that this is going to make America energy dependent, completely false, because it's all going to export. The idea that it will create jobs only creates temporary jobs in terms of pipelines, and the amount of jobs that it creates is not worth the complete ecological destruction. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you have a job or not if there's no life left on the planet. You know, screw your job. So, but I certainly understand, when you're talking, when James was talking about the community not really knowing what's happening in their own backyard, there is this sort of stick your head in the sand attitude that that we see in our communities, and what does it take to get people beyond that to be brave enough to face the really, really terrible truth that we're faced with at this time.
Half the people know what we're talking about, and the other half have no idea because they are misinformed by the media, they are misguided, and they are disempowered. They believe what their leaders tell them, and if you propose if a real alternative to the view that they have, they dismiss it as being propaganda, leftist, too idealistic. So we have to find on our side a way of communicating to those people in such a way that they get that their best interests are being violated by this industry, and will continue to be so unless they do something about it, unless they understand that their life as they know it is at jeopardy, unless we change the system.
Right. We have to, and we're not only is it going to be educational, but like you said, it'll hit at that emotional part of the person where they really get just how damaging and devastating it is. So I'm excited about your project, and I hope that I can make the premiere of it. Yeah. So do you already know where you're going to premiere it? Are you going to premiere it in New York?
I would like to premiere it in New York, yeah, because I think that that's kind of where it all started for me. Between New York and Pennsylvania, of course, was because the initial research that I did took me into Pennsylvania, but I actually moved to where I am right now specifically for this project because I just needed to continue doing the research that I did close by. So, it took me much less time just to have a place up there. So I didn't think it was going to take me this long, but have it. But what's extraordinary is that in the process of becoming an accidental activist, I've met some incredibly extraordinary people. There is a huge community of people that are working their butts off to try to get things changed and to try to get information out there to people, and also trying to stop what's happening. And both Pramila and Jamie actually got themselves arrested. And they have a court date coming up. So to me, they're heroes for putting themselves on the line to try to raise awareness about something that's they're trying to protect not just their area but all of us. And
right.
We just came back from, Jamie and I just went to the Women's March, and what blew me away was how many people were there and the atmosphere, just the energy that was there. And I feel like we're on the cusp of something, where in a sense, Jamie talks about a paradigm shift, and I really think we're on the cusp of a paradigm shift. It's just that we need to keep talking about this. We need to keep filling the airwaves with information that people can really understand and then do something with that information.
Agreed. And Pramila, would you like to tell us a little more about when you got arrested with James?
We got arrested about a little over a year ago. And since that time, the judge doesn't seem to want to have a trial on this case. We were charged with obstructing a driveway, I believe. It's a minor offense, but the point was to raise these issues before the public, all of the impacts from this plan. As Jamie said, most people really don't know still what the impacts are going to be. So this action was really an opportunity to bring the public's attention and awareness to the issue. Now, and we, anticipated a trial. are prepared to testify. We have public health experts, climate change experts. We have, Tony Ingraffia from Cornell, Bob Howarth. We have, a tremendous team of scientists, but it doesn't seem like the judge wants this trial to be held. And that's because this entire project was permitted through corruption, through a very corrupt process. And right now, the company is the subject of a criminal trial by the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York. And yet still construction is continuing. And so this was, when you live in a lawless society and the law itself is so immoral, you have to engage in this type of tactics. So that's what we did. We're a community of police officers and firefighters, and everybody has been really supportive because they understood why we did what we did, that it was absolutely necessary.
I am glad that you had that type of support. We definitely didn't have that from the local people in Standing Rock. People in Bismarck, for instance, they were okay with the privilege that they were given to say no because they were worried about the poisoning of their water, and they got to say no. They got to say no, and that was fine. And so now, Indian country is held at at gunpoint and forced to submit and to accept these pipelines of fracked oil that they've said no from the very beginning. And in my opinion, it's all Indian land. So it all, and it's all indigenous land throughout the world, and it's and each and every one of us has an indigenous spirit. We remember what our connection is, or we can remember what our connection is to the earth and to all life, and in doing so, our responsibility to do everything we can to stop what's going on. I applaud not only the political efforts going on, but the creative efforts going on. And I think in order for this paradigm shift to take place, it's going to take everything we got to do it and make it happen.
Yeah, and what you said about that we're all indigenous or we're all native in a way, and I think that's really important because I think we've forgotten our connection to the earth, or most people in this culture have forgotten our connection to the earth. And one of the people that actually is in the cast, he's a shaman from Greenland, and we call him Uncle because we can't really pronounce his name. Angulak Ungasorskak, and I'm sorry if I'm completely mispronouncing his name, but he wrote a book called Melting the Ice in the Heart of Man. And he's actually been a very powerful speaker around the world on the subject of climate change, and talks about how it's inevitable that the ice is already melting. He comes from Greenland, and Greenland is basically, the area that a lot of this ice, people have been observing the ice melting there. And he says that what we need to take a look at our own hearts and how we've built this wall around our hearts. And I think that's really important because we live in such a mind-centered culture that we forget that. We forget about empathy. We forget about, walking by a homeless person, and, not feeling something for that homeless person. I think that that's part of the paradigm shift, is that we all need to begin to melt that ice that's been in the heart of man for quite some time now. And that's part of, relearning our roots, the roots that we all have to the earth. The disconnect, that whole disconnect, and the crack, the crack in everything is also that disconnect between ourselves and each other and the planet. Because if we really start to become more connected, there's just no way that we could allow what's happening right now to go on.
And it takes a certain willingness to recognize our own fragility, and I think that's where the wall is for people, to really let in and recognize the fragility and sacredness of life. It's hard because there's a mourning process that goes on when you finally let that truth in, and so we're taught to run away from the reality of grief. We're taught not to grieve. We aren't taught how to grieve properly, or to allow ourselves to grieve. It's seen as a weakness. So when we finally do let the reality of what is actually happening in, it hurts. And so people are running from that pain. But it's actually, more painful to run from it than it is to finally face it, because then you're free and you know what you're here to do.
Absolutely. That's absolutely true.
So for those of you who don't want to take that step, it's a learning process too, for myself. How much can we fight from the inside of the machine, and how much do we fight from the outside? Some of us who probably are meant to fight it from the outside might find ourselves on the inside, and have to fight from there. And then the whole thing about how it's really hard to make a living in this country now, and people are really just focused on their basic needs, just trying to survive, that they don't want to face this other huge thing as well. But again, we can all take steps in our everyday lives to resist and to say no.
And to not lose our humanity.
Right. That's
really the key, and to begin to come more from a place of love rather than fear. That's what's happening right now. I think a lot of people are reacting to this fear that is coming up for them because of what's been going on the exterior, and so it's hard. It's hard not to come from fear these days.
There's a lot to be afraid of. That's for sure.
Things seem to be pretty unstable right now. So it's challenging, but that's why coming together, we have to figure out ways to come together in ways that that we haven't before. And that's one of the beauties of the internet is, we can meet people, we can connect with people that we wouldn't normally have connected with. And also, that's also true with alternative media, and why shows like yours are so important, because what the mainstream media is not necessarily, reporting or discussing some of the things that a lot of us find so important. I mean, look what happened with Standing Rock. I mean, how few of the mainstream channels even covered it.
Right. Yeah, and they're not going to. So the revolution might not be televised, but it's going to be live streamed.
There you go.
That's for sure. People would not have believed that a tank would roll up to a group of praying people in this country until they saw it on a live stream. Yeah, and they didn't take our warnings, back when the Department of Homeland Security was created. And now all of these war toys are being given to our police departments. A lot of people warned us that, we're going to have this army that will turn against us, and we're seeing that happen. Militarized police have become normalized over the last 10 years, and we, and when we have these terrible events, like Boston bombing, things like that, we have people conditioned to applaud the fascism, to applaud the way that we control our society, because we're scared. Again, we're coming from fear, and we willingly give our rights up for the illusion of safety, when we've just put ourselves in more danger by giving up those God-given rights. for that illusion. So we're not only facing the ecological devastation of this industry, but we're also facing being branded as terrorists when we're simply trying to save lives. And really, the true terrorists are the ones who are destroying all life for profit and making us have to fight them, to resist, to not comply. That's not terrorism, and it's not violence, even in my opinion. If you have to destroy property in order to save lives. So if you have to, for instance, disable a digger or something like that, in my opinion, it's not violence. That can be replaced, that can be fixed, whatever. The violence is how the industry is raping the earth and destroying life.
Well, and the crazy thing is that it doesn't even need to happen. It's
right.
Not if it's for money, right? If it's all for money, it doesn't need to happen. I mean, we have renewables. Money could be made through renewables. I mean, there's a lot of different alternatives. That's what's crazy about all of this. In my mind, that's why I don't understand. I don't understand that. And also, what I don't understand is, the mind of a billionaire. Like, I don't understand. Okay, how many more billions can you have? I mean, what? Really? I mean, you want more money? Why would you? What are you going to do with it all? It just doesn't. It doesn't compute because they don't. And I think that some of these people that are at the heads of, the companies, the fossil fuel industry, and also the people that are calling the shots that are making, huge sums of money. I don't think that they are maybe thinking this through. I don't think so. I really don't think they're thinking this through because I don't really feel like they couldn't understand that they're actually hurting themselves.
You really think that Tillerson does not know, after all the work he's done at Exxon about global warming, what the cost to them in the long term is? And so is what he is doing is short-term thinking for his own profit and for the profit of his company and supposedly the shareholders at the expense of a vision that he says is inevitable anyway, because we can't stop it. He can't see any alternative to his system. He's completely wedded to the capitalist system, to the extraction system, to the exploitation of capitalism. He has no alternative to this. Capitalism is the end of history. There's nothing better than capitalism. That's what he sees. And capitalism ultimately is about the transfer of all the wealth to fewer and fewer and fewer people until it's just really one person who has everything and the rest have nothing. But that's totally untenable. So if he had the imagination to project out into the future, he would see that what he is doing is committing suicide. But he doesn't have. He is blinded. People who are blinded and incapable of thinking, he is insane. They are insane. We have elected an insane man. He has surrounded himself with the insane, and they are pursuing a policy that will lead to their own suicide and the suicide of all the rest of us, unless we absolutely turn the entire process on its head. But it has to be the entire process. The whole system, every piece of it. We're all on this train together. We're not outside of the system. There's no place on this planet to get outside of the system. The indigenous people in North Dakota, they're not outside of the system. They are at the expense of the system. They are the detritus of the system. They serve no purpose to the system, but it doesn't mean that they're outside. This is a revolution. The paradigm shift is a transformation of everything at great pace in order to deal with the conditions that are untenable. And it is coming, but it's going to demand incredible sacrifices on all of us, like the sacrifices that I saw at Standing Rock.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say that it's pathological, and that what we're seeing from these capitalists, from this capitalist nightmare, And that's why I call my blog Psychopaths in Charge, because that is what every problem that we face in this world is directly traced back to, that pathological people are running things, and they don't have a conscience. You can't have a conscience and continue to do what this man is doing.
There's a line in King Lear. They says, "They will not see because they do not feel. What he is disconnected from, he is disconnected from his heart."
Right.
As are all the people who refuse to see that somebody else's travail is theirs, that what we do to other people will be done to us. You can't bomb Syrian and Lebanese children and Yemeni children and not think that it's not going to come back and happen to us. We have to care about them as we care about the person who lives next door or the person who lives in our house. We have to feel first and let that be the thinking organ of our body.
Yeah, so the disconnection from the source is the disconnection from our own hearts.
Correct.
That is the same disconnect.
That's the disconnect.
Right. And it does take a mourning process, so stop running and join the resistance. It's a series of creative non-compliance that we will change the entire paradigm.
Yeah. Boycott the banks, boycott Exxon, apply what the power that we have. Use the power of our numbers and our pocketbooks to make an impression on them that they have to take us into consideration. They have to find out what it is that we need. They have to listen to us and act appropriately. I'm talking about politicians now. I'm not sure that the corporations care because they make money from all over the world. But this is a world movement. This revolution is not just in America. This is happening in Europe. This is happening everywhere, in China, everywhere.
Absolutely. And I put the call out there for everybody who wants to articulate their concerns and to share what they're doing in their communities to stop this, to come. And I've completely dedicated my show to the resistance since covering Standing Rock in August, and I will continue. And as long as this show is here, this is what it's about. And I'm overwhelmed and overjoyed to see such talent dedicated to this cause as well, and so many hearts coming together. I really am, both inside and outside the system. So people like yourself, Pramila, for being willing to put yourself out there and run for an office in order to change things in your community. For you, Verushka, putting your directing skills, and James for your acting skills into this. That's what it takes. And I hope that other parts of the world follow suit, and your film is used as an example of how to get things done. And now that you've sort of crossed a threshold, Verushka. The last time that we spoke, you were still out. You were still out there with a lot of faith that it was going to happen.
It's what I was saying before, and I really mean it. It wasn't even my choice. I don't feel like it was my choice with this path that I've been on now for the past 4 years. And I never would have imagined that I would be in this position, but I just don't see any other way. And we really do live in extreme times. I mean, we live in a time, I suppose you could call it Twilight Zone times. I mean, it's so much bizarre stuff going on at the same time. Trying to catch up with what's even happening out there is challenging. But we need to figure out ways to do that. And I just don't see any other way than just, doing this movie, continuing, like, getting it out there. I really want to continue to engage people in any possible way, to continue to talk about how this isn't working. The system that we're living in isn't working. How the fossil fuel industry is destroying the planet. That we just don't have the luxury, and that's the whole thing, is that we don't have the luxury of just waiting around to see what's going to happen, because we already know what's happening. We already know, scientists have told us what's happening. 99% of scientists are saying that climate change is real and it's being caused by human activity, and fracking is just an example of something that's even more dangerous than even CO2, because of what it's doing with the release of methane. So, aside from the environmental impacts, it's also having an impact on climate change. So we just don't have the luxury. We don't have the luxury of waiting around. And that's why it's so important to engage more people. And how do you engage more people? Well, that's the beauty of the internet. That's the beauty of, in a sense, the internet is a revolution. Because we didn't have this ability to connect with people in China instantly, or in Korea, or in India, or wherever, because this broadcast could be broadcast anywhere, Australia, we have this instant way of communicating with each other, which is so powerful. So let's use it. Let's get together instead of, being in these groups, because there's so many different groups that are out there that are not necessarily working together. Mm-hmm. And we have the same, what's the goal? Well, the goal is, we all want to be around. We want to have a planet. We want to have the ability to continue life, not just human life, but, all life. And, that if people could just understand, I think that's part of the problem. What Jamie was saying before is that, we have a certain percentage of the public that don't, I'm not sure if they just don't want to see it. They're putting their heads in the sand because they just can't deal with it, or they just really don't know. They just don't know. They don't have the information. But I can't imagine that because the information's out there. Mm-hmm. If you're an intelligent person, if you have any kind of intelligence at all, you can find this information out. And then once you find the information out, it's your responsibility to do something with it. And that is to change your life, How do you change your life? Well, you do what you can do. Obviously, right. You can't do something you can't do, but you can, everyone, that's the amazing power of that march. It was so incredible to be there, because it was this pulsating group of smiling, energetic people, women and men. It wasn't just women. I mean, men showed up for the Women's March, and in support of the feminine, in support of this balance that we're all seeking. And it's something that we can all do. We can all do that. We can all look in our own hearts. That's the first step, right? So, but we have to get real. Everyone has to get real. Everyone has to understand what is going on, and not, take the heads out of the sand and make a decision about how we're going to move forward.
I'm really hoping that this nightmare that we call a presidency will finally lift the veil for folks that have their heads in the sand, because it's so abhorrent, and it's so in your face that those who are ignoring. How can you ignore this now? How can you ignore the chaos and fascism that we're being subjected to? But I think people are overwhelmed because, like you say, we have the beauty of this internet, but then we also have information overload. People not knowing how to self-care, or to, look at what information is valuable and what's not. That discernment process, we're still learning that. The internet is actually very new in terms of our, development as human beings. To be able to have access to this much information at one time can be overwhelming for people. And like we were talking about before, people don't know what to believe and what not to believe. And so that's why, James was saying, the narrative of this film is so important, because it allows people to put it in a context that makes more sense than I don't know if this is fake news, or I don't know if this is, real news, or I don't know if this is slanted to the left or the right. And, that's how people become overwhelmed. And so it's a very worthy project. Again, I'm going to ask people to please give to the Indiegogo campaign. There's only 4 more days left. It sounds like Pramila was wanting to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to comment a little bit on some of the topics that we talked about. I think that, Verushka raised the question. She doesn't know why people are kind of acquiescing to the system. And I think we need to really look deep in our culture, because we've been conditioned for a very, very long time by the socioeconomic and political system that we've created to participate in our own oppression. And we've been lied to and told, for example, that evolution is all about survival of the fittest. And that's not true. Actually, the latest scientific studies on evolution show that species actually survive by cooperating, by looking for mutual benefit. So, we've been taught these lies for, many, many hundreds of years. It's a foundation of Western intellectual thought and culture. Mm-hmm. And that's why you see such a difference between indigenous cultures and Western cultures on this topic. But I think that we are all, at our core, empathic beings, and I can prove it to you. And most people, an average person, if they walk into a funeral home or a funeral of somebody they do not know at all, and they see a group of people crying, they will start to cry. And likewise, if you walk into a group of people laughing, watching a comedy show or something like that, whether you know what's happening or not, you will start to laugh or smile. And that's because we are inherently empathic beings. It's just that the system has taught us, conditioned us to defy our own nature. And I think that's the problem. Even in the fracking fight, we have to struggle so hard to tell people about the health impacts, and it doesn't move them. Why? Because we've been conditioned to think it's okay to be poisoned. So meanwhile, we have a socioeconomic system in which these corporations deem all life expendable, including the lives of our children and ourselves, and yet we proactively participated. Some things, again, this is, hundreds of years of conditioning that we have to exercise ourselves of. And what I love about the Standing Rock movement, it has created this juxtaposition, which is so timely and so necessary. It's invoking not only this basic battle for human rights and civil rights, but it is really recalling the struggle with colonialism and the clash of civilizations that's been, underway for the last 500 years. So I think that after 500 years, it's time that this struggle get resolved. And I have a lot of faith in humanity. I think that Verushka is right. What happened in the Women's March is really uplifting, and it gives everybody hope that we can break free from this system. And I think we have to, as Jamie and Verushka have said, the system we've created is an existential threat to all of us at this point. So we have no choice. None of us have a choice.
To go along with the sort of the lies that we've been taught that you were talking about, we've been taught to think about history itself as a march towards greatness, that we keep improving over time, and that, we were just in ancient times that we knew less than we know now. But when we look within, we find out that, probably we knew more because we lived in a cooperative way. We lived in a connected way, hunting, gathering, foraging off the land, learning from plants. And, so that doesn't match the narrative that we've been taught, that we just struggled and killed each other, back in ancient times, and now we're much more civilized. And, now civilization kills with the stroke of a pen. So we're not marching towards progress. That lie, we have to decolonize from that lie, very much so, in order to the whole idea of progress. What does that mean? What does that mean? We really have to examine that in order to truly move forward.
Yeah, and at what cost progress?
At what cost progress, exactly. And from camping out in a teepee at Standing Rock, I would rather live in a teepee where everybody had their, had access to food and health care and healthy drinking water, than live in a mansion where not everybody does. And as you were talking about these billionaires before, how many homeless people does it take to make a billionaire? It takes quite a few. So in order for people to live like that, they live off the backs of the poor and the wage slaves. And so does the government. And right now, under fascism, we're seeing the marriage of corporations and government stronger than it ever was before. And we're seeing that there's no front anymore on that. So I think that at the same time that we're going to suffer some more under this fascism, we're also going to see the resistance becoming stronger because there's no front on it anymore. So we have one more minute. Would anybody like to get in some last words here before we go?
I guess I want everybody. I think what Pramila said is wonderful. I really do. I think that, I do feel hope. I really do, especially with the energy that is right now being created in this movement that we're building. There's momentum, and I think that sometimes things might have to get worse before they get better, unfortunately. But I wish that weren't the case. But I think that Jamie had said to me, actually, when Trump became president, he said, well, maybe it was actually better than, Clinton, because I think it's actually motivating people in ways that maybe they wouldn't have been motivated.
I absolutely agree. Thank you so much, Verushka. Thank you, James. And thank you, Pramila, so much for joining me here today.